Hi, I'm Tommy, and I'm a professional paleontologist. By day, I use the latest data science techniques to reconstruct ecological and evolutionary changes from the fossil record. But by night, I investigate cryptids, the paranormal, mediumship, the occult, politics, history, philosophy, and even God himself. You know, all the things that good little scientists are supposed to avoid. If you want to join me on my journey, friend, be so kind as to like and subscribe. And welcome to Creepy Puppets Presents. Okay, so this is part 2 of what was originally one video responding to the worst ableist content of the ABA promoting YouTube channel Autism Live. When we last left them, they were telling us ABA survivors how we should be grateful for our abuse because we can communicate our pain thanks to our abuse. Well, that was the worst. There are a few other terrible examples worth considering. So this comes from an interview with Christina Adams. She's the Camel's Milk Will Make Your Autism Better lady. And they're talking very vague about some kind of nasty media controversy over therapy. It's vague and passive-aggressive, and they never explain really what they're talking about, but this is an interesting bit.
I'll tell you, here's one thing that people know. I hear from people all the time in my work. Autism and Camel. So it's a place of privilege. When you are in a country where you can say they're getting too much therapy or we don't like this therapy, you're coming from a place of
we're so privileged. We have so much abuse. We're just handing out abuse all the time. Isn't it wonderful? All those people in the third world don't get any abuse for their children at all.
I hear from parents all the time. Egypt, India, Sudan, Africa. They don't have anything. They might have to go 1,000 miles to the only doctor in the country to try to get an appointment that they wait 6 months for, and they might get a little occupational therapy, they might get a little speech therapy, and they pay out of pocket for it. So
Well, first, it's of course tragic that these poor countries that have been victims of colonialism can't afford to provide for their basic medical care. Now, the United States also sucks at providing that kind of medical care. But I'll say that OT is good all around, and and speech therapy is good for those who need it. That's all you need. You don't need any ABA. Like, that's not medical advice. That's moral advice. ABA is evil.
it's almost a backlash to me. Now I can see where, if your child is getting a lot of intensive interventions, sometimes it's natural. You redesign the program, you change things up. That's just part of it, right? Yes. I mean, that's what a well-run therapy provider does.
Absolutely, but it's not harmful to the child. And I don't really want.
No. It is harmful to the child. We have documentation on this. PTSD as adults, severe trauma, and extreme depression as a consequence of self-image issues.
I want to address a lot of the things that are out there because I don't think they're worthwhile addressing. But
our suffering is not worthwhile addressing, folks.
I do want to say I would never allow my child to be put in a circumstance in which he was being harmed anyway. And I don't.
You gave your child ABA. The ship has sailed.
Believe that you would either. No. And
I mean, you do think that camel's milk can cure autism, or at least reduce its symptoms. So this is a clip of an interview with Amy Gravino, who is autistic herself and also a BCBA, or an ABA therapist. And so, like, her presence here reeks of tokenism, of, oh, we found someone who is not only autistic and pro-ABA, but also so pro-ABA, and so, with so much internalized ableism, she's gone out and practices and advocates for it herself. So, let's take a look at this particularly egregious part of the clip.
You have an MA in Applied Behavior Analysis from Colorado University, 2010, and Amy, like, I can't let it go, because it's so often that people will write in and say to us that, well, let's be honest, there's a lot of folks that are self-advocates who are not big fans of ABA, right?
Yes, because we generally, the majority of us, regard it as abusive and inherently bigoted.
And people write into us and say, if ABA is so great, why don't we see more adults on the spectrum talking about that? And I always say, because they're busy out living their lives. Like, they don't want to sit and convince you of anything.
Well, I'm trying not to use the B word or the C word, but lady, I have a master's degree, and I'm here, sitting here trying to convince you, if you're in the audience and you're thinking about ABA, or you don't know it, ABA is abusive, bigoted pseudoscience, and in the lived experience of autistic people, is terrible.
But so, as a person who refers to herself as a self-advocate, you have a master's in ABA. Are you a fan of ABA or not a fan of ABA?
Oh, well, that's a complicated question. I mean, I'm a fan of the science of ABA. I think that the idea behind it is actually a reasonable one, which is just helping people make changes to their behavior that they're choosing to make.
Yeah. Okay. So, barring the question of whether or not it works in those cases, this is not something they are choosing. These are things the parents are choosing for them, or they've been so convinced that they're broken that they realize they need to change because of the attitudes directed at them. Right? No, but look, if you want to waste your money as an adult to get ABA, more power to you. But not for kids who can't consent or can't refuse to consent.
Basic concept. It's then, however, how it's applied in practice problematic. And
Yes.
so when I'm
No. It's all the time. It's inherently problematic.
there too, and that is what happens sometimes in the field of ABA is that when you are in there, you kind of forget that there's the rest of that there. And so many times I hear it said the goal is the dissemination of ABA, the dissemination of the science, but that's not happening. Not getting out.
Well, yeah, I have a whole video on how ABA ticks off the majority of the boxes of a sociological cult.
There and the positives of this, and then you're listening to this, and they're trying to make these changes. For autistic adults who are working in the field, there's a Facebook group devoted to them, but obviously they're very reluctant to allow us strong anti-ABA sentiment.
So there are other self-hating autistic people out there. Yeah, we knew that already. Thank you.
Self-advocates. And many feel just completely exhausted trying to not necessarily defend ABA, but explain why we chose to get involved. And I will say to people, okay, if I'm not there saying all this stuff, then they're not hearing it. Would you rather I be at these conferences?
They're not hearing it anyway because they're indoctrinated. You need to be out there talking to the parents. That's the important part. We need to be out there convincing the parents that ABA is bad and to discourage them from doing it.
Conferences, would you rather I not be, talking to these BCBAs and telling them, what they're doing wrong? Because then they're not going to hear it. So,
As far as I'm concerned, BCBAs torture disabled children for fun and profit. There's already a nice spot in hell for them already.
somebody has to be out there actually doing, not just talking about it online and
we're going to get back to that direct action point in just a second.
I'm not trying to squash anyone's voice, but the action has to be the next logical step. So
And I agree. Watch to the end, please.
that's why I'm trying to get out there and make changes from within rather than out.
I really appreciate that.
This is the last clip we're going to talk about in this section. And, oh boy, do I have things to say about it. First, Bill Maher made a joke about silly putty becoming on the spectrum putty, which was their segment to talk about this. And this is important, and it's also something I've brought up in just about every one of my autism videos except the very first one. So I'm going to use this essentially as a pretext to talk about the Department of Defense study.
And we need him as an ally, and he's been an ally to the autism community before. He isn't afraid to ask questions. He's afraid to cover stories that are a little incendiary.
That's because Bill Maher has flirted with anti-vax stuff, but he's, by far one of the least offensive when it comes to that.
Right? So I want to recruit Bill Maher, and I would like to have the autism community join me and you, Nancy, in asking Bill.
Hold on. I know what you mean by autism community, so let's make this clear. When she's talking about autism community, she means autism moms. She doesn't mean us. When we say autistic community or autism community, we mean the community of people who are #actually autistic, not autism moms. And the problem with allyship in the autism community is that so often we are talked over and our own feelings get ignored.
We're going to tell you what the story is, and then we're going to tell you how we want you to reach out to Bill Maher, not to cancel him, but to recruit him. So there's a big story today, and we all need to get on board because the Department of Defense has been looking at ABA. Look, they've been treating, in the military, kids are treated for autism using ABA. And regularly, as any organization should, they take data to see, is it working? And they've been doing this for the last couple of years. But here,
TLDR, it doesn't work.
here's the bottom line. The Department of Defense has found that ABA is not effective in treating autism.
And it is glorious.
Here's the problem. The way that they took the data, the person who invented the tool that they use to look at the data to see if it's effective, that person has publicly come forward and said, you didn't do it right. You didn't use the tool the way I
That person is wrong, and we're going to talk about that in just a second.
intended it, that you did something wrong. He's reviewed the whole thing and he said, you've done something wrong, and here's how wrong it is. The thing that would measure if ABA was making the most success, they didn't include it. They miscoded it, and it wasn't included at all. And
Yes, again, that is not true. The author there even concedes that he doesn't know if it was measured incorrectly or not, and some effect of ABA was measured, it just wasn't the good one.
multiple organizations have stepped forward and said this is a travesty. This could have catastrophic effects.
It means the ABA therapists won't get paid by insurance companies.
It could be that any moment now the DoD is going to come out. They've already said we found it to be effective. The expectation is that if something else isn't done, they're going to take this shoddy data and say we're ending ABA for all of our military families.
Drop it like it's hot.
Out of that catastrophic. Even people within the military, let's not even talk about what it'll mean for the children, that it will mean that our military is not able to be military ready because of what they will have to do.
Oh no. Our military won't be as effective if our children aren't being constantly abused.
Why aren't they listening to the criticism of how they interpreted the data? That's my question.
Well, firstly, because it's garbage, and we're going to talk about that. But more importantly, it's incredibly twisted that a bid meant to reduce the amount of money going to autistic people ended up being the biggest boost for autistic rights ever.
I would like someone like can guess that it's going to save them a whole bunch of money if they decide that ABA.
Because ABA is an expensive money pit.
Right.
No, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. All I know is this is bad on every level, and it needs to be stopped, and we need big voices.
ABA is bad on every level. It needs to be stopped, and we need big voices. I agree.
Right now, calling this out, saying, hold up, let's go back and look at the data. Use the tool that you said you were going to use, but use it properly. And
They probably did. We don't know.
you're going to come up with a different conclusion. And we need this help right now. So here's what's going to happen. Later on today, our producer Traven is going to take just this portion of the show, and he's going to cut it out. It's going to be available on our Facebook page, and we're asking for all of our viewers, we need to get Bill Maher's attention, because this needs big guns, national television exposure. You know, we can all use our voices, but we need to focus them someplace. We're asking you to focus it at Bill Maher. With the hashtag, because we get his attention, we know that Bill is very concerned about cancel culture. Bill has also been fighting for over a year to get solar power at his home, and he is stuck in the bureaucracy.
So you're equating child abuse with solar power. Okay, great. Look, here's what I really want to say about this video. Let's scroll down a little bit here. You'll notice that it says for comments. Yep. So here's the thing. I commented on this video, which explains basically everything that is wrong with the criticism of the study and why the study is correct. But as you can see, my comment was deleted. So I am going to read my comment for you right now. I'm a professional data scientist with a master's degree in bioinformatics, the application of data science to biology, and currently working on my PhD in geoinformatics, the application of data science to geology. I've read the DoD study. I've read the rebuttal by Dr. Ira Cohen, the creator of PDDBI, and I've read a counter rebuttal by Dr. Barry Nathan. My professional opinion, again as a data scientist, is that the DoD study, while flawed, is ultimately correct. ABA is doomed. Here's why Dr. Cohen is wrong. The conclusions are not just based on data collected by the DoD. Every prior study on ABA ever published was combined into two independent meta-studies that both showed ABA is based on laughably terrible evidence, most of which wouldn't have been published in the first place were it not published in ABA journals. Number two, we don't know if the PDDBI data the DoD collected was correctly collected or not. The DoD hasn't published the full methods and dataset. It may have been, and Dr. Cohen readily concedes this possibility. Dr. Cohen's criticism of the so-called incompetent data collection was referring to an earlier version or preliminary study. Assuming the Department of Defense data wasn't corrected correctly, so not collected correctly, so this is granting your point, the data still can be used to measure an improvement of ABA, and Dr. Cohen concedes this point too. The Department of Defense data did show a weak improvement over the course of therapy, but there were no controls, people who received no treatment versus people who received AB alone, OT alone, etc. So we can't identify the cause of the improvement, but if there were an effect of ABA, we should be able to see it in the data. So the authors have tried a creative solution. Statistical regression of PDDBI versus hours of ABA therapy. 10 hours a week of ABA should be less effective than 40 hours a week of ABA, right? I mean, why else would you insist on 40 hours a week of ABA? Well, there was no statistical correlation when they did that. Dr. Cohen is concerned that we don't know enough about socioeconomic factors or other factors to make this conclusion, but the sample size is so large, and military families have less variation than the general population anyway, that this concern is a ridiculous one. The Department of Defense data alone had more than 3,700 kids. The average ABA study has less than 40 kids. This was the largest study of ABA ever conducted, and it only confirms what other exhaustive meta-studies have shown: ABA does not work. This is not bias by the Department of Defense, and it does not come out of nowhere. ABA does not work, and taken together with the Kupferstein 2018 PTSD study, we're probably less than 10 years from ABA therapy being dropped by every insurer in the country, if not banned outright. I say, God bless the DoD today. Finally, we need to talk about how Autism Live responded to criticisms directed at the organization Autism Speaks. Alright, we're almost done. I just want to react to this wonderful reaction to criticisms made of Autism Speaks for all the things that they allegedly do. And in this case, it was specifically not having any autistic people on their boards.
When you waste your time judging something by something you wish it was, not what it is, that's exactly what it is, a waste of time. And so
yeah, that's the definition of normality, right? Like, I want universal health care in this country. Our healthcare system should be graded on what it should be, not what it is. It's pretty good if you have healthcare, which most people doesn't apply to. Obviously, we want to be aspirational in our criticism. We want to judge it on what it should be.
There are organizations that are run specifically by individuals who are on the autism spectrum.
And they have fractions of the wealth and reach that Autism Speaks does. They don't have celebrity endorsers, and their views are ignored by all of the autism moms, too.
And I don't go to those and say, where is a parent on your board? Why
I mean, you seem like the person who would, though.
isn't there a parent on your board? That's not what their organization is about. And while I agree that I think that Autism Speaks can only be stronger if they have a board member, I think it's very easy to sit back and say, I don't like what that organization does.
Maybe the California relativism has gotten to you, but there's a difference between I don't like what that organization does and what Autism Speaks is accused of doing. There's a big difference between, oh, I don't like what this organization does, and I don't like what the Klan does. Because that's what they're being accused of, is effectively using their huge platform to promote hate speech and ableism.
Well, if you don't, then that is not the organization for you to support. And I ask you, what organization
Good, I don't.
have you started?
Oh, that's it. That's the sweet, juicy nonsense, right? If you haven't started a multi-million-dollar organization, you're just not as good as the biggest promoter of anti-autistic bigotry out there.
You're furthering the conversation. They put themselves out there in a way that I certainly haven't. I haven't created an organization that has given millions of dollars to research. But if I did, I would want for a group of people to decide with me about what to give that research to. And if it's not what you want to see the research to go to, then I encourage you to go start an organization that does. We need you to do that. We need.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I have decided to start an autism organization. See that in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I've decided to start my own autism rights organization. Right now, it's just a Facebook group. But if we get enough interest, we can try to raise money to make it become a real nonprofit. Right now, the group is called ABA Noncompliance. That's what the Facebook group is called. Our outreach will focus on the promulgation of anti-ABA positions to parents and doctors. Let's disseminate the DoD results to everyone. Let's send it to every insurer in the US. Freedom from ABA is in sight. Thanks for your time, friends. This has been a long road, and soon I'm going to return to my usual content. Valiati, Samiki.